So the other day, my husband and I decided we wanted to get out and go for a sunset hike. And there's this gorgeous little overlook. It's a short hike to get to. It's not too far from our house. There's some benches at the top that you can see the sunset over the entire city. And it is absolutely gorgeous. And when we got up there, we found a gospel tract on one of the benches. And I am not a stranger to gospel tracts. I used to hand them out all the time when I was a Christian. My youth group would take stacks of the Ray Comfort branded tracts out to the mall, and we would give them out to as many people as possible, trying to win souls for Jesus. And I made a TikTok about this tract, and then I misplaced it. So I don't have it, unfortunately, to show you, but it had this hand kind of reaching up out of some water like somebody was drowning, and it said, you know, there is hope. And it had a Bible verse, and it had a website that you could go to, whatisthegoodnews.org. So I went to the website, naturally, and at the very front of the page, it says, in a world of bad news, there is hope. What is the good news? And then it has a video of Paul Washer. And if you don't know Paul Washer, consider yourself lucky. And it goes into the typical evangelical message. You know, our world today seems to be filled with nothing but bad news, a global pandemic, escalating crime rates. Well, research shows otherwise. One crisis after another, and an inescapable feeling that death could be just around the corner for any of us. But in a world that seems full of nothing but bad news, there is hope. And then it goes on to talk about how you've probably taken a lot of precautions to protect your physical health during the pandemic, and yet how often have you stopped to think about where you're going to go when you die? And then it just goes on and on and on about sin and Jesus and the good news and why you need to be saved. And it really got me thinking about evangelicalism and the irrationality of evangelical conversion. As you guys know, I came from a very strong evangelical background. We believed that it was our mission to fulfill the Great Commission and to go out and to tell everyone we could about Jesus. There was this sense of urgency that people all around us were dying, that nobody knows, you know, when is going to be their last moment on earth, and that you've got to get right with Jesus before that happens. And so we felt like it was our mission to go out and make sure that people knew about Jesus so that they could make an informed decision about the, the eternal resting place of their soul. And I think a lot of people that do this probably have very good intentions. A lot of people that do this are very young. Kids, especially in youth groups in these evangelical churches, are really primed and groomed to become these little miniature evangelicals to go out and spread the gospel. And so I think a lot of people do, they have good intentions and they want to help other people. And this is the way that they've been taught. They are helping other people. But I really started thinking about how absolutely irrational it is to not only, expect people to convert to your religion based on these evangelical practices and methods, but how irrational it is to convert to evangelical Christianity because of these methods and these tactics that are used. And I realized that there really is no rational way to convert to Christianity. At least not that specific kind of bubble of Christianity. I'm not saying all Christianity, because everybody has different ideas of how you practice it and live it out. Some people really do just believe you got to be a good person and that's how you're a Christian. I don't think that the Bible would necessarily, or biblical authors would necessarily agree with that, but I'm talking mostly about this idea of Christianity that insists that you must change your entire life and dedicate it to this ideology, that you have to completely repent from your life, your lifestyle, everything you're doing, change everything about who you are, die to yourself, believe in a 2,000-year-old resurrection and all of the miracles that accompany it, and really devote every aspect of your life to this belief, to dedicate everything about who you are. And if you are not actively living as a Christian and following those rules, and you're going a different way, if you've chosen a different path, well, that is a path that feels authentic to you. And so if you have to change everything about what is authentic to you and your personality and your perception of the world in order to follow this thing, well, it better be true. But how can you know that any of the claims being made within Christianity are true? These are some outlandish claims that they're providing for us, right? They want us to believe that people were walking on water and turning water into wine and raising people from the dead and, all kinds of out there claims that none of us would believe in any other circumstance, but for some reason, so many people make the exception for Christianity. Now, everybody has different reasons for believing in Christianity or converting to Christianity. However, I think the majority of people that are converting to Christianity are doing so either because they were raised in it, and that's just, you know, what they were taught, and at some point they reach the age of accountability and say the prayer and do the thing because their parents and their pastors told them to do it, or because they were in a vulnerable position. They had a pastor or a street preacher or a little piece of paper, you know, found in the woods, telling them that, you know, these things are true and that they must believe in it. They must repent. And not only that, but there is this sense of urgency that, you know, you don't know when you're going to die. It could be tomorrow. It could be today. You might not have 5 minutes left. You need to get right with Jesus right now. And the expectation is that the person receiving the good news, or, you know, being told about Jesus, is going to instantly want to convert and give their lives to this thing. But why would you dedicate your entire life and personality to something that you have not first properly researched, that you don't really know to be true? At the end of the day, Christians say it takes faith to believe it. You have to believe on faith. But faith is not a rational way to come to conclusions about your reality. And I can't see any other way that people rationally dedicate their lives to things that they have to take on faith, like they take the claims being made in the Bible or by Christians. I mean, think about the system. Think about how you're just going about your life, you're doing your thing, and somebody walks up to you and they make a claim. And they say, this is the most important claim that you'll ever hear. And what you believe about this claim will completely impact your life, and it will affect what happens to you when you die. You're going to want to really carefully examine that claim before you just take it, right? That would be the most rational thing you could do. But within Christianity, the expectation isn't that you're going to take the information, go home and think about it, research it, learn about all of the, you know, ancient languages and the historical context and the theology and the very complex and complicated way to understand the Bible and read the Bible, you know, all of the poetic language and the metaphorical language and the rhetorical language and the hyperbole. There's so much in the book that is so complex and so complicated. It would take a lifetime to really study it and examine it, to find what you're supposed to get out of it and to really understand the message being conveyed. And even then, you're really not going to get a full message because the Bible was written by lots of different people from lots of different backgrounds and different religions and different times and different cultures and different languages, you know, compiled together to create one cohesive book that really isn't that cohesive. But unless you jump into it, unless you read it, unless you really do the studying required, you're not really going to know that. You're not going to know really anything about it. You're not going to know the history of Christianity, how the Bible was formed, you know, the things that were changed and altered and removed from the Bible over time. You're not encouraged to look into any of those things because within evangelicalism, there is so much a sense of urgency that you don't have the time. You don't have time to make sure that these claims are true. You just have to accept it on faith. You just have to believe it because somebody's telling you to believe it. But that's not rational. That's not a rational way to conclude that you should dedicate your life to something. Now, there's going to be a counter argument from Christians, because I hear it all the time, where I say, you know, you kind of just have to trust the people that have dedicated their lives to studying these things. But those people don't really agree with one another. You can have like 10 different theologians and they're all going to give you different answers about what they think. And then you're going to get 10 different biblical scholars and they're all going to give you different opinions about, you know, what they think. But I'll say that, you know, you have to trust these people and you have to trust their interpretations and their translations and what they think about the Bible. And you just have to kind of believe it. And Christians will respond and they'll say, but that's kind of how everything is, right? You have to trust scientists that they're accurately portraying that the earth is round. You have to trust, historians when they give you information about what happened in history. We don't all just go and do the research and data ourselves to learn about all of these really complex things that we tend to believe about our reality. Somebody made an example, well, you believe the earth is round because people tell you, because scientists studied it and they've, determined that the earth is round, but you haven't actually studied it for yourself. Well, no, but I think I can reasonably conclude based on, the fact that science has proven itself to make accurate claims about our reality. I trust that system. And in the event that I found out the earth was flat for some reason, that all of the science was wrong, we've been fooled, and the earth is actually flat, it's not round, I have not dedicated myself, my personality, or anything else to this idea that the earth is round. So if I found out tomorrow it's flat, well, that would be pretty shocking. We'd all have a lot to kind of think about, but it wouldn't change anything about how I live my life. It wouldn't change anything about what I perceive about myself or my society. It really wouldn't change too much about that, if anything. I would just find out that, oh, well, we were wrong. The science was wrong and now we got to fix it. We trust medicine. We believe that the scientists and the doctors that created the medications that we use are going to help us and not hurt us. But sometimes they get it wrong. And we take medication accepting the risk that that medication might not work or that medication might have adverse side effects. And then if that medication doesn't work, then we can change course. We can take a different medicine. We can try something new. It's not the same in Christianity. You don't just trust and then you're open to just being wrong. No, you're supposed to just put your faith in it. And if you lose your faith at any time for any reason, even in the face of contradictory evidence, to what you believe, if you lose that faith, well, you never had it in the first place and you were never saved. So you're supposed to just maintain the faith no matter what you're faced with, no matter what new information you're given. The whole scientific theory exists to prove yourself wrong when you have a theory. You think something might be, and you work to prove yourself wrong to make sure that what you believe is true. And if it's not true, then you change course. You change what you believe. You adapt to the new information. Religion doesn't give us that. Christianity doesn't give us that option. It doesn't give us that out. We'll have faith, but if we find out that this isn't true, well then, try something else. No, if you're faced with something that shows you this is irrational or this is probably not true, or it's not believable, if you're faced with that, you're supposed to just ignore it and have faith. That's not rational. That's not rational at all. And so there's no other thing that I can think of that we really put ourselves into, like people put themselves into religion with such little reason to do so. So often people come to my comments and want to accuse me of not, being theologically sound or, not having the right interpretations, not having the proper understanding, not having enough education, not being a theologian, not being a biblical scholar. They want to kind of create this intellectual argument against what I'm doing here. They turn Christianity into an intellectual thing when people like me speak out against it. Suddenly you need all of the education in the world. You need all of the research in the world. I might bring up one Bible verse and somebody will say, well, you have to consider the language, the context, the rhetorical argument being made. You have to look back at the ancient Greek and pick it apart and make sure that, there's all of these complex things that you have to do just to understand one little verse. Now apply that to the entire Bible and think about how long it would take someone to go through everything they need to go through to really understand this incredibly complex ideology, system, text, all of it. It would be impossible. You really wouldn't have the time, and most people don't have any time to devote to the research needed to really determine that these are true claims. And so you have to take it on faith. You have to just decide that, oh, well, my pastor told me, or, oh, I found a tract, in the woods and it sounds right. So I'm just going to go with it. And within evangelicalism, you don't have the option to take the time that you would need to determine that this is a rational claim. You don't have that time because you might die. You might die on your way home. So you have to convert to Jesus right now, right this second, because if you don't, it could be too late for you. And isn't that such an absurd system? that God would design a system by which you have to take it on faith without any research, without knowing anything about it, and just believe it, because it could be too late if you actually take the time to rationally conclude that it's true. Why is God rewarding you for gullibility? Because if it was any other claim, any other religion, Christians would say, don't believe them, don't follow that, that's a false teacher, that's a false prophet, that's a false God. But they expect you to just believe them when they say it. But they'll say like, oh, the resurrection, or all these things, they'll give you all these reasons that Christianity is true. But you're taking their word for it, and they're taking someone else's word for it, you know? And you're not actually determining if it's true for yourself. You're just taking someone else's word. And sometimes we do take people's word on things. But do we dedicate our entire lives to those things and put ourselves in a position where we are unwilling to change our beliefs or change our perception if presented with evidence that's contrary to what we believe? And yes, I get people have personal experiences, and spirituality is very emotional and it is personal. And, you know, if you have an experience that convinces you to convert to Christianity for whatever reason, that is you, that is your thing. And I'm not denying that. But I think too many people make the mistake of being born into a Christian culture where it is assumed that Christianity is true from the get-go without the proper research and time dedicated to studying it and learning about it. People grow up in this culture where they kind of already accept that it is true or could be true, and then they're faced with, you know, someone who is claiming that it's true, putting out this sense of urgency, and so they just have to believe it. And how do you confirm that Christianity is true? You have to take it off of the word of ancient people that were writing thousands of years ago and writing decades after the supposed resurrection. You have to just trust that those people were writing an accurate account, that the messages that were passed on for years after the death of Jesus were accurate, and they were accurately written down, and then the people that translated them were accurately translating them, and that when it went through the hands of people with political motivations, that they didn't do things to alter it or change it. You have to trust that entire process, this 2,000+ year long process. And you just have to believe it and have faith and accept what other people have determined about it, even though all of the people that do go to school and take the time to dedicate their lives to learning about this, they all go to school, they come out of it, and then they fight with one another and they disagree. Because they can't all come together to agree on one solid message, one solid ideology, who Jesus was, what he was preaching, what he wanted. They all have different ideas. It's all subjective. Yet Christians come to you and they present it as if it is objective truth that you're supposed to just accept. And instead of examining it, taking it and unpacking it and doing the research necessary before you completely change everything about yourself and dedicate yourself to it, you just have faith. Because, well, I'd rather believe it than not, and if I die, I could be wrong, and that would be really bad. That's not rational. It's not a reasonable way to conclude your reality. And I just think it's so bizarre how we live in a society where that is just so normalized for people to convert to and dedicate their entire lives to a religion that they know very little about. Because most people that dedicate their lives to Christianity don't do so after they've gotten a theology degree, after they've, you know, gotten a master's in biblical studies, after they've gone through all of the ancient texts and learned all of the ancient languages and really studied it, and then come out a Christian, you know, a Jesus believer. Usually people convert because they were raised in it, because their pastor or their parents told them, because a street preacher told them, because they were in a vulnerable position and they found a gospel tract on a bench and they saw it as a sign from God, and then they got manipulated by the language about the impending doom and the sin and the guilt and the shame tactics. None of this seems rooted in any kind of reason or rationality. And all we really have to do is consider the fact that Christians will claim that the evidence for what they believe is their faith, that the faith is the evidence, and that you don't really need to think about it. You don't really need to take the time to research it. You just have to believe it. Because if you don't, you might suffer for all of eternity. If you have to tell people that they're going to suffer for all of eternity in order to get them to believe something without actually providing the reasons to believe that thing, then you probably don't have very good reasons to believe that thing, and you shouldn't be getting other people to believe that thing too. But that's just my thought. That's my opinion. And I just wanted to kind of share that today because it just really got me thinking when I saw that tract, and I just thinking about the absurdity of this instant conversion and this expectation that you're supposed to go out into the world and win souls on the spot for Jesus, expecting people to ignore all reason and rationality, and really rewarding them for being gullible enough to just believe whatever you tell them because you say it in a way that seems convincing enough, because you've manipulated the language enough to really make it palatable for the people that you're sharing it with. But I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Let me know what you think. You might have something to add to this conversation, but it's really something that I just kind of had on my mind and wanted to kind of get off my chest. And I did. So there we go. Please like and subscribe, leave a comment, do all of the things. If you want to see future content, you want to help support this channel, you can follow me on TikTok. If you want to hear more of my hot takes, Christy.Burke. And don't forget, I have a merch shop, jezebelvibes.com/shop. It's where I throw my hate comments on my shirts and, kind of create designs that are a little irreverent and blasphemous and reflective of the life that I now live outside of Christianity, away from traditional values. I'll make sure I link everything in the description, and I'll see you next time.